All right, 1 second here. Why does this move so slow? Okay, it says I'm live. Can I mute it? Okay, there we go. 1 sec. I need to post the link. Okay, I guess I'm just copying the link. 1 sec. Good. Almost got it. All right. Welcome to the special episode. Since I'm not in Bloomington, so we're going to be doing it here. I guess to start, there's a lot of college football to talk. There's a little bit of a shakeup in the rankings for me as well as the AP poll. But let's check out the AP poll here first, real quick. All right. So the top 25 for the AP poll, Georgia stays at 1. Ohio State and Michigan, they have them switched this week. So Ohio State's at 2 and Michigan is at 3. Washington and Florida State switch. So now Washington is at 4 and Florida State's at 5. Oregon stays at 6. Texas stays at 7. Alabama stays at 8. Louisville and Missouri, I think they switched from last week. So Louisville is now number 9 and Missouri is now number 10. Penn State is 11. Ole Miss is 12. Oklahoma moves up into 13. LSU 14. Oregon State falls to 15. Arizona is at 16. Notre Dame moves up into 17. Tulane 18. Kansas State 19. Iowa 20. Oklahoma State is in the 21st spot. Liberty 22nd. Toledo makes their way into the rankings at 23. JMU 24, and Tennessee falls to 25 after their loss to Georgia. Mine are a bit different, but but you can see that with the AP polls rankings, after the way Michigan played against Maryland, they decided to move them down 1 spot. I'm assuming that's why they moved them down. And with Florida State, I think they got moved down a spot because they're taking into account the Jordan Travis injury, which will have a big impact on the way Florida State plays the remaining few weeks of the season. And that also gives Louisville a shot, like a better shot at winning the ACC championship and possibly sneaking into the top 4 in a couple weeks. Texas and Alabama and Oregon, those guys aren't going to move until probably after the conference championships. Missouri that's probably their ceiling right now, since they've already lost to Georgia, and they've already had a couple other losses that are going to prevent them from making the playoffs. And Missouri's also not going to have a shot at competing in the college championships because they're not first or second in the they're not first in their region of the SEC, so they're just not going to have a shot. Penn State, same thing there. That's like about their ceiling. They've already lost to Michigan and Ohio State. Michigan and Ohio State are undefeated. So even if one of them loses, Penn State's not going to have a shot at making it to the conference championships. They still might make a New Year's Six bowl. They just have to keep winning their games. Ole Miss also, they've had their 2 losses already. They're not going to make it into the conference championship, so they've also hit their ceiling as well. The Big 12's a little bit of a different story. So even though Oklahoma State is down in the 21st spot in the rankings, they still do have a shot this year to make the Big 12 championship as a second play, just under Texas. Basically the Big 12 right now is trying to figure out who is going to get second in that conference. Notre Dame also, I think, has hit their ceiling. They're not going to make it to... they don't have a conference championship, but they've already taken more than enough losses that is going to keep them out of the top 4. Arizona, I think they probably have a chance to move up further. It depends on whether or not they make the Pac-12 championship, because right now they're in 3rd. So if Oregon State beats Oregon this weekend, and if Cal or Stanford lose their game as well, then Arizona could make it to the Pac-12 championship over Oregon, spoiling Oregon's chances of making it to the college football top 4 playoff. So I'm gonna show you guys my rankings here real quick. I posted them already, but I have Georgia at 1. I also switched Michigan and Ohio State. So Ohio State's at 2, Michigan's at 3. And I also switched Washington and Florida State because I originally had Florida State at... no, I left Washington and Florida State the same. I already had Washington at 4. And I'm going to keep Florida State the same just because, after Jordan Travis left, Florida State still scored a lot of points in that game. And they also didn't allow Northern Alabama to score any more points. So I think Florida State, even though they're using a backup quarterback, I think Florida State still has a legitimate shot at making the top 4. So I'm going to keep them right at 5 right there. Oregon, Texas, and Bama, I have them staying the same. They're at 6, 7, and 8 respectively. Louisville and Missouri, I think I had Louisville at 10 last week and Missouri at 9. I switched them just because I think Louisville has a better has a path that's possible to make the top 4 at this point. Missouri does not. So I don't think it's fair to have Missouri over Louisville right now. Penn State I have at 11. That's pretty close to what the AP poll has. I think I just have them ranked slightly higher. I think AP had them at 12. I have Arizona at 12, actually. And I kind of went into it a little bit earlier. Arizona has a shot to make it to the Pac-12 championship. And I think they might also have a shot at spoiling Washington. Because right now it's looking like Washington is a sure thing for the Pac-12 championship. Washington's undefeated. There's one more weekend left, so I think even if they lose somehow to Wazoo, I still think that Washington is going to be in that conference championship. Oregon, if they lose, Arizona makes it to the championship. And Arizona could spoil Washington's chances at making it to the top 4. Because if Washington loses, they'll be a 1-loss team, which will give other teams like Florida State a chance to make it up top. So I have Arizona at 12. And they've also just been playing insanely well. I don't think anyone wants to play them right now just because of how they're playing. They just absolutely dominated Utah on Saturday in a way I just did not think that was going to happen at all. I thought that game was going to be so much closer, but Arizona just killed them in the first half, and then just their defense did the rest of the work in the second half. Ole Miss I have at 13. It's pretty. That makes sense. Oregon State, I moved them down a few spots because going into the game against Washington, they were actually favorites to win that game. So I thought it was fair to bump them down a few spots after that loss. I know normally I try not to punish the teams that lose to higher ranked opponents, but Oregon State was a favorite to win that game, and I'm taking that into account into the ranking, so I bumped them down. And also Arizona has beaten Oregon State, and Arizona has a better path to the Pac-12 championship than Oregon State does right now. So I think it only makes sense that Oregon State goes below Arizona. LSU, I have them at 15. I mean, they dominated their opponent last weekend. Tennessee, I have at 16. I bumped them down quite a few spots just because, they lost to Georgia at home. The only drive they scored on was was literally the first one. They just scored on that first drive, and that was it. Didn't really put up much of a fight. So, and at their home field, like towards the end of that game, there was no one in the stands from Tennessee at that game. It was really sad for Tennessee. So yeah, I bumped them down to 16. I have Oklahoma State at 17. They took care of business. I think it was against Houston. Yeah, they took care of business against Houston. So they won, so I bumped them up a few spots. And they also still have a shot at that Big 12 championship game. They just need to win out and hope that the other Pac-12, the Big 12 teams lose their games. Oklahoma, I have them at 18. I'm respecting the head-to-head win that Oklahoma State had against Oklahoma. Oklahoma also won their game, but I'm not going to put Oklahoma above Oklahoma State right now just because of that head-to-head, and I think Oklahoma State has a better shot at going to the Big 12 championship than Oklahoma does at this point. I know Texas probably wants Oklahoma to make it just because, just to redeem themselves, because they lost to Oklahoma a bit ago. So, I think if Texas really wants to solidify themselves in that top four, they need Oklahoma to win out, and the other Big 12 teams to lose. So that way Oklahoma goes to the Big 12 championship, and then Texas beats them. That's probably the best thing for Texas is if Oklahoma wins out and makes it to the Big 12 championship. I have Notre Dame at 19. They just absolutely crushed Wake Forest. I don't think they're gonna make it to the. They're definitely not making it to the top four. They could make a. They could make a big game, like a bowl game. I could see them maybe going up against LSU in a bowl game, maybe against Arizona in a bowl game. We'll see what happens with that. Liberty have it 20. They're still undefeated. So I bumped them up a spot. I've been kind of resisting bumping Liberty up too much, just because they're a group of 5 team. They're not a Power 5, so their strength of schedule is not as good as the other teams, but they're one of the few undefeated. Actually, they're the only undefeated team that's in the going from 25 to 9. So yeah. Actually, no, 25 to 6. Yeah, they're the only undefeated team in that grouping. Utah have at 21. They just looked really bad. Like Arizona just completely tore them apart. They're out. They're not going to have a chance to defend their Pac-12 title. I think Utah had some kind of high expectations going into this year with them being the defending Pac-12 champions, but they're not. They didn't look like the defending Pac-12 champions this year. They just looked like another Pac-12 team when they played Arizona. So I bumped them down. Tulane, I have at 22. They won. I think because that loss to Ole Miss, I don't think they're going to make it into the top 4. They're still going to make a bowl game. They're definitely bowl eligible, but yeah, I'm just keeping them in that. I'm going to leave them in that 22 spot. Iowa have at 23. They took care of business. It literally went till the very end. But Iowa is going to be representing the Big Ten West and the Big Ten Conference Championship. We'll see what happens with this weekend with the Ohio State-Michigan game coming up. Which one of those two teams is going to represent the Big Ten East? Kansas State, I have at 24. They beat Kansas. It took them a lot of effort to beat Kansas, even though Kansas wasn't 100% healthy. So I'm leaving them in the high 20s. And Toledo, I have them entering the rankings at 25. They've been playing fairly well this year, so I thought it right to bring them in to the rankings. Okay, so 1 second. Okay, so would it talk a little bit about swimming? So, hold on. Okay, so sorry about this. Okay, actually, hold on. Let me talk a little bit about the Ohio State-Michigan game real quick. We can draw up some scenarios. So let's just say that let's say Alabama wins the SEC championship. Texas wins Big 12. Washington is undefeated Pac-12 champion. Florida State is the undefeated ACC champion. And then let's just say, so whoever, Ohio State or Michigan, is going to win. So the Big Ten champion. Then you've got the undefeated Big Ten champion. And then you've got a one-loss Georgia. I think in that scenario, you're obviously, Big Ten champion is obviously going to make it in. I think Bama would make it in after beating Georgia. I think Texas would probably make it in because that head-to-head matchup at the beginning of the year, I think the committee will respect that, and they will also bring Texas into the top 4. And then it would really just be between Florida State and Washington, which I think they'll probably take Washington just because because of the injury. But I mean, it also kind of depends on how those conference championship games go. Like how dominant is the team going to be when they win, when they when they, why can I not put it together? Just by how much they won by. Let's just see how much it depends on how much Washington wins by and how much Florida State wins by. And you also have to consider that Washington will be facing it depends. If Oregon wins this weekend, they will be playing Oregon. So that'll be a top 6 opponent. If Louisville wins, and they may. I mean, they're most likely going to. But if Louisville wins, Florida State is also going to be playing a top 10 opponent. So it's going to be, the committee has a really hard decision with the AP poll. I mean, let's go and look back at that again. But yeah, I mean, like you look at the AP poll. I mean, if you also think about it, like if Arizona makes it to the Pac-12 championship, right, and Oregon loses, then that means Florida State's quality of opponent in the conference championship is going to be better than Washington's. And I think in that scenario, Florida State will be in the top 4 over Washington, whether or not they have the backup quarterback. Because, I mean, if Florida State wins, then, I mean, you can't punish them for winning. You can't be like, oh, well, because you have a backup quarterback, you can't make it in. But if you have if Washington beats Oregon again and Oregon stays in that top 10, then that's going to be a much better look for the Oregon, or I mean for the Washington team at that championship. And in that scenario, I think Washington will be over Florida State. But I mean, this year it's not going to be anything like last year at all, because I mean, last year, look at it, it was pretty easy, I think, for the committee to make the decision on who was going to make it. Like for the top 3, it was just who was going to, like, the committee was just trying to figure out who was going to be in that 4th spot. But this year, because there's so many more teams that are in contention, it's going to be harder to even figure out who's going to be in the 3 spot, who's going to be in the 2 spot. The 1 spot is, I mean, I think the 1 spot is probably going to go to the SEC champion. I think the committee has a little bit of a bias towards SEC teams, but I mean, SEC does have, I mean, it's nothing against the SEC, of course. I mean, they have high quality football programs. I mean, this year, you look at them, they have Georgia, Alabama, Ole Miss, LSU, Missouri, and Tennessee. So they have 6 teams in the top 25 right now. And I think the closest to that would probably be the Pac-12 with, hold on, because Big Ten has 4. They have Ohio State, Michigan, Iowa, and Penn State. So they've got 4. Pac-12 has Washington, Oregon, Arizona, and Oregon State. So they also have 4 there. So, I mean, right now, SEC, they have the most, like, maybe Big 12. Let's look at Big 12 real quick. You've got Texas, Kansas State, Oklahoma, and I think that might be it. Yeah, that's it. So they also only have 4. And you've got independent Notre Dame. You've got Tulane. They're in the AAC, I think. And then there's JMU, which is and Toledo's also in a separate conference as well. So, yeah, no, right now SEC is looking like the biggest conference in the AP poll right now. At the beginning of the year, it was the Pac-12. Towards the beginning of the year, I think Pac-12 had like 7 or 8 teams in the top 25. But because the way things panned out in that conference, they just cannibalized themselves. So now there's only 4 teams. But yeah, I mean, I think there is possibility that Louisville makes it. I mean, the big thing they have to do is beat Florida State, of course. That win might not look as good, though, because of Jordan Travis's injury, them going up against a weaker Florida State. But yeah, I think it is possible that that Louisville makes it in. It really depends on. I think Bama will probably have to beat Georgia. Texas will have to probably win the Big 12 championship. I think if Oregon loses this weekend to Oregon State, that'll help their case as well because it'll make Washington's opponent look weaker. And if Washington loses to the weaker opponent, or the weaker opponent, which would be Arizona, then Louisville is just gonna sneak right into that number 4 spot. That's what I think. That is how Louisville would make it in. I think that's the only like possible way that they can sneak in and make it. But yeah, very eventful weekend coming up for college football. There's a lot at stake for especially those top teams. But I mean, of course, like Louisville, like they need this weekend to go a certain way. Arizona, if they want to make it to the Pac-12 championship, they need this weekend to go a certain way. Oregon needs to win against Oregon State if they want to keep their hopes alive to get another shot at Washington. Washington, they need to keep winning. And I think in Michigan and Ohio State, I mean, that it sucks that they like are playing each other low key just because I mean I think both these teams would do really well in the playoffs, but I think this will also be a very interesting rivalry game just because both of the teams have distinguishable weaknesses. Like we kind of saw Maryland's defense pick apart the passing offense of Michigan, with J.J. McCarthy throwing those interceptions. We did see Michigan's defense. They were really strong against Maryland. They scored, I think, 9 points in that game. The defense did, which you don't really see all that often. Ohio State, they played, I think it was Minnesota at home. They won pretty handily, which I think is why they moved them above Michigan. But the thing with them though is their quarterback. He does his job and he does it well, but there's just even at this point in the year, there's still a lot of questions surrounding Kyle McCord. So I mean, they're wondering, well, against a against a strong defense like Michigan's, how is Kyle McCord going to be able to use the throwing game? Like, how is he going to get the ball to his receivers, right? Yeah, I think this rivalry matchup is gonna be it's gonna be a classic Big Ten game. There's gonna be a lot of running, and there's gonna be a lot of defense. Those are gonna be the key factors in that game. I think this will probably be a relatively high scoring game. I don't like the past few years. One team has gotten into the 40s in that game. I don't think that's going to happen this year. I think the defenses are going to have a bigger impact than the offenses of both teams. I can see if either team tries to throw the ball, I can see turnovers happening. Yeah, I think it'll be in the 20s. I think both teams will make it into the 20s. I think whoever wins will be they'll be at 27, maybe 29 or 31. the loser will probably be at like 23 or 25. But yeah, that is going to be that Ohio State Michigan game is also probably going to be the most watched game this year. I mean, even over the playoff games, I think. Depending on who makes it to the playoffs, though. I mean, I remember last year when Ohio State played Georgia, that was up there in most watched, I think. But that was also a really great game. So yeah, it should be interesting what happens this weekend. Honestly, I kind of hope that Louisville makes it in to the top 4. I feel like that'd be fun. They'd be the TCU of this year. And I think Louisville is, I don't know. I mean, people see the ACC as a weaker conference, but I mean, the ACC has also been kind of cannibalizing itself in a way when you have teams like Miami and Clemson who don't really have a shot at making the they're not even neither of them are in the top 25 right now. So they've just been going around and spoiling teams' seasons because they were, at least Clemson was, out of playoff contention early on this year. They took 2-3 early losses. But then they go beat Notre Dame, and then they go beat other teams. Like, same thing with Miami. They go out and Miami beat Clemson. Miami spoiled Clemson's season. I think Miami was the third loss that Clemson took. So, yeah. I mean, right now, Arizona is one of those teams in the Pac-12. They're just spoiling other teams' seasons. And same thing with, Oregon State was looking to do that with Washington last week. They were very close, but they did not. They didn't get that. So yeah. Oh, I gotta do college pick'em. Hold on, we're gonna do that on the laptop because you guys can see it. Okay, so let's just look at the games real quick. So the first game we have Ohio State versus Michigan. Not surprised that's all in there at all. As you can see, it's split pretty evenly down the middle, which, I think that says enough of how close that game's going to be. You've got 49% of players for Ohio State, 51% for Michigan. Then you've got the Louisville-Kentucky game. Lots of people are picking Louisville. I think Louisville will win this one hands down, to be completely honest. But we'll look more into that game later. UNLV, San Jose State. UNLV is coming off of a huge win against Air Force. And Air Force destroyed San Jose State. So I think Las Vegas should come out on top here. We'll see where that game's going to be, though. Then we've got Northwestern versus Illinois. That one's split pretty evenly down the middle. You've also got the Wisconsin-Minnesota game. Wisconsin hasn't really been too great this year. So I'm kind of surprised a lot of people are picking them, but Minnesota's also not that great, so I don't know. Then you've got Virginia. Whoa, okay. Then you've got Virginia Tech versus Virginia. Lots of people are picking Virginia Tech. Virginia, they have 3 wins, but they've had some weird wins. So I don't know. They've got Jacksonville State versus New Mexico State. Lots of people are picking New Mexico State. I think New Mexico State, they've been, they're 9-3. It's kind of crazy. And they're underdogs in this game, but lots of people are picking them. So I don't know. Then you've got Kansas versus Cincinnati. Kansas will win that one. Even when they're not 100%, I still think they're better than Cincinnati this year. Oh, this one should be fun. South Carolina versus Clemson. Mm. Hold on. I want water. Mm. Lots of people. Lots of people are picking Clemson. I mean, I understand why. I mean, Clemson has just been on a roll. So, I mean, South Carolina's kind of overrated in this year, in my opinion. I think compared to last year, they're doing worse. And then the last game is North Carolina versus North Carolina State. Both of these teams are 8-3. This will be an interesting matchup. And then of course, the how many points will be scored in the Ohio State versus Michigan. So that's the tiebreaker. So let's look. So we already know. So what do we know about this Michigan versus Ohio State game? We know that the game is in Ann Arbor before we even look and see what it is. But let's look at the spread here. So Ohio State is +3 in the spread. Michigan's -3. Makes sense. Home field advantage. Over under is 46.5. And then the matchup predictor has Michigan with a 54.8% chance of winning, almost 55% chance. Ohio State with a 45.2% chance. It's basically split down the middle. You compare the stats. Kevin McCord, he's taken a lot more throwing attempts, but he has made more than JJ. JJ has looks like more accuracy. I mean, I think 175 to 237 is better than 211 for 318. Kevin McCord has almost 2,900 yards compared to JJ's 22,335 yards. Kevin also has 4 more touchdowns than JJ. They both have the same amount of interceptions. So that touchdown to interception ratio is in Kevin McCord's favor. You look at the rushing yards. Michigan has a lot more rushing touchdowns. You've got or at least with these two players, their primary running backs. You've got T. Henderson's with 10 touchdowns. You've got Corum with 20. They have about the same amount of yards, though. Henderson has 794 yards, almost 800 yards. And Corum has almost 900 yards. He has 888 yards. The carries, Henderson has 118. Corum has 180, so he has more carries. So Corum, I think, runs it. He's the guy that does the running in the end zone mostly. For receiving, Marvin Harrison Jr., he's at almost 1,100 yards. He has 62 receptions with 13 touchdowns. Wilson, he has 37 receptions, so almost a little more than 20 less receptions than Marvin Harrison. He has 612 yards. He has 10 touchdowns. So since they're both in the Big Ten East, there is a lot of comparables that we can do here. We can look at the Michigan State game, where Ohio State gave up 3 points, scored 38. Michigan scored 49 and gave up none. You can look at the Maryland game. Michigan scored 31 but gave up 24. Ohio State, they scored, where is it? I know they played them. Yeah, they scored 37 but only gave up 17. So I mean, it really depends. You also look at the kind of the strength of schedule. I mean, Ohio State still has that win against Notre Dame on the road, 17-14. And then Michigan, I think their highest quality opponent was probably Penn State. where they Penn State was within 9 for Michigan. Penn State was within 8 for Ohio State. So it seems like it really depends on the weekend, really depends on the day. It's going to be cold. So that just favors my take even more, that this is going to be this game is going to be done on the ground with a lot of running. When it's cold like that, it makes the ball a little bit harder to catch. So expect a lot of running in this game. And I think that's also why Michigan is favored, because I think Michigan's run game is slightly better than Ohio State's. So I think Michigan is probably the safe pick here. If you're feeling risky, could pick Ohio State. You think maybe for some reason Ohio State's just gonna they're gonna win. Because Michigan also still doesn't have their head coach. JJ, the past couple games, he hasn't really thrown a lot. The ones that he has done, they were sloppy, kind of. So it really depends on how you look at it. I think for this game, I'm gonna pick Ohio State, even though it's at home against Michigan. Even though for Michigan it's at home, I think Ohio State's defense, they're probably going to get some early points because Michigan, I think they're going to try to throw the ball, and that'll cause a turnover in the beginning of the game, and I think that's going to set the tone for that first half, and I don't think Michigan will have enough to quite come back at the end of the second half, but it'll be close. But I think it will go in Ohio State's favor. Louisville versus Kentucky. Louisville has the under with on the spread -7. They have just under a 75% chance of winning. Kentucky's also they've lost 4 of their last 5 games. Those losses being to Missouri, Tennessee, Alabama, and South Carolina. And that loss against South Carolina, that is a really bad loss for them. Louisville, their only loss is to Pitt. It was at Pitt. This game's also at Louisville. Slightly warmer weather than the that's like perfect weather. 49 degrees, 50 degrees. That's like perfect. I think Louisville's going to win this game. I don't think Kentucky has a horse really in this race, so I'm going to pick Louisville here. We already talked about a little bit with UNLV and San Jose. I'm going to pick UNLV. They're 9-2. I think they're looking to be conference champion. It looks like it's going to be close. UNLV has a 58% chance of winning. Both these teams are kind of on a win streak. But I just like that victory over Air Force. I think they're going to carry that over against San Jose State, and I think they'll beat them. Next, we have Northwestern versus Illinois. I know Illinois is not quite at 100%. Neither of these teams are that great, so I think it should be, the matchup predictor has it relatively even. Illinois with a 59% chance of winning. I don't like that touchdown to interception ratio though for for the quarterbacks right now. 13 touchdowns for 10 interceptions, while Northwestern's quarterback, Bryant, he has 9 touchdowns for 4 interceptions. I like that ratio a little bit better. I also like that Maryland, that win against Maryland is better than Illinois' win against Maryland. Yeah, I think it'll be close. A lot of people are picking Illinois. I think I'm going to pick Northwestern. They came off a huge win against Purdue. They beat them 23-15. and they scored a touchdown against Iowa. I mean, that was a relatively slow playing game, but them being that close to Iowa, I mean, Illinois was close to Iowa as well, but they gave up a lot more points, which I think is a better look for Northwestern's defense. It says a lot about their defense because Iowa has one of the top defenses in the country, but their offense isn't that great. So I think that winning against Iowa is going to be the most important comparable here. So I'm going to take Northwestern in this match. No, lots of other people agree with me, or at least half of the people playing agree with me. Minnesota versus Wisconsin. Wisconsin came off a overtime win over Nebraska. They came from behind. It's looking like it's going to be pretty close. Wisconsin's got the under on the spread. It's minus 2.5. Yeah, but before they won against Nebraska, they were on a 3-game losing streak. They lost to Ohio State, IU, and Northwestern. So, and Minnesota's also been on a 3-game, or at least the 3-game losing streak was before that one against Nebraska. But Minnesota right now is on a 3-game losing streak, losing to Illinois, Purdue, and Ohio State. I mean, it's at Minnesota. Minnesota's had some weird wins at Minnesota before. I think because of the hype around this week for all the teams. I think I'm going to go and pick Minnesota for this game. Even though I like that win over Nebraska that Wisconsin had, I think for some reason Minnesota is going to, like, Wisconsin is going to just succumb to the pressure going away to Minnesota, and Minnesota's going to come out with the win. Minnesota, they're also trying to be bowl eligible. You have to have 6 wins to be bowl eligible. So this is going to be a very important game for Minnesota. Virginia versus Virginia Tech. I mean, there's a lot of hype around Virginia Tech. They were seen as possibly being able to upset Louisville and sneak past them to get into the conference championship. It's not looking like it didn't. Yeah, no, it just didn't look like that at all. Virginia. So let's look at their 3 wins because they're against teams that, or at least 2 of those teams were ranked at some point. Duke was ranked at some, like they were a top 25 team earlier this year, and they beat them by 3. Was it at Virginia? Yes, but still, I mean, that is a huge win for them, nonetheless. They also beat North Carolina, who was ranked 10 at the time. They beat them 31-27, and this was at North Carolina as well. So, Virginia can sneak up on teams. Um, but I don't know this game. But Virginia Tech, let's just look at the teams they've beaten. Um, they beat Syracuse, Wake Forest, Boston College. So they've won 3 of their last 5. They beat Pitt. Yeah, that's it. Um, yeah, Virginia Tech hasn't really been all too consistent this year. Their longest string of wins or losses is a 3-game losing streak at the beginning of the year. I mean, lots of people have Virginia Tech in this game. Hold on, let's just see where this game's at, because that will determine. I think in this type of game, because it's a rivalry game during Thanksgiving weekend, the home environment is going to be a big factor. And it's at Virginia, so I think for some reason we're going to see Virginia win this game. Honestly, I was kind of expecting Virginia Tech to have a better chance at winning this game, like maybe having it be 70-20, but the fact that it's 60-40, basically split down the middle, that's kind of selling me on, that's one of the things kind of selling me on Virginia, and also the fact that it's at Virginia. And they just had a huge home win there last weekend against Duke. So, yeah, I think they do it again. New Mexico State, Jacksonville. New Mexico State, from what I've seen, they've kind of been on a roll. They're right behind. They're actually tied with Jacksonville State for second in the conference standings, despite their overall records. New Mexico State has an overall of 9-3. Jacksonville State is 8-3. Both are 6-1 in the conference, though. I do not like that touchdown interception ratio that Webb has from Jacksonville State. 5 touchdowns for 4 interceptions. So I mean that's almost like throwing a touchdown and then throwing an interception. Like for every touchdown you throw an interception. That's not great. Pavia from New Mexico State, he has 22 touchdowns for 6 interceptions, which is really good. He also has almost 1,500 yards more than Webb for passing. And he also has more completed passes than Webb has thrown. Like, Webb has thrown 164 and completed 80. Pavia has completed 176 and thrown 291. So quarterback play is dramatically different. New Mexico State seems to have an edge there. And the quarterback also being in the rushing yards statistic tells me that he is not afraid to run the ball in for the touchdown. Like, he's not afraid to use his legs. And I think that could... And he has 5 touchdowns, 5 rushing touchdowns. Almost as much as the running back from Jacksonville State. Jacksonville State has... their running back has 6 touchdowns. So I think, despite what the matchmaker says, with it being split almost down the middle, I think based on these stats, I think it's safe to say that that New Mexico State is going to win. They're also coming off a big win against Auburn last week, 31-10. I don't think that should go unnoticed. Let's look at some of their other wins. If it'll stop moving. Okay. Yeah, I mean, they're just on a huge win streak ever since they lost to Hawaii back in September. They've been on a 7-game win streak. I don't think that stops. Whereas Jacksonville State, they've lost 2 of their last 5 games. So I think, and they've been against quality teams, kind of quality teams. They lost to South Carolina. South Carolina is definitely not as good as Auburn, and New Mexico State just destroyed Auburn at Auburn on their senior night too. So I think they're going to be riding off that momentum from that game, and they've just been rolling. So I think New Mexico State is the team to pick here in this game. Kansas State versus Cincinnati. I mean, I think that's pretty self-explanatory. Even though Kansas isn't 100%, I think they still beat Cincinnati. Bean has as many touchdowns as Jones does interceptions. Not good for quarterback play for Cincinnati. Kansas also has more rushing touchdowns. Receiving is about the same. Kansas is on a 2-game losing streak, so I think they're gonna want to come back and I think this is at Cincinnati, so I think they're gonna want to go beat Cincinnati on the road. Kansas, I think they're out of the running for conference championship right now. They're 4-4 in the conference, but I think Kansas is gonna win this game. I mean, as good a team as Kansas is, I think they're not gonna be happy about that loss to Kansas State. Cincinnati hasn't really been playing that great all year, so I'm gonna take Kansas in this game. Clemson, South Carolina. I think. Let's see where this is first. Hold on. Oh, it's at South Carolina. Okay. So that could be a factor. Personally, Clemson's on a 3-game win streak. They beat Notre Dame, they beat Georgia Tech, and they beat North Carolina. Notre Dame and North Carolina were both ranked teams at one point this year. You also look at Georgia Tech, who Georgia Tech beat Miami. And, granted, Miami just made a decision-making error in that game. So that was kind of a fluke win for Miami. But, is what it is. South Carolina's also been on a 3-game win streak as well. They beat Jacksonville State, Vanderbilt, and Kentucky. These have all been at home. I think, if I remember right from last year, South Carolina beat, I think they beat Clemson last year. Hold on, I'm going to look it up. One sec. Hold on. No. All right, so if you look at the schedule, you can look at games from last year too. Hold on. So let's scroll back up to they won 31-30. Both of these teams were ranked last year, and this was at Clemson. It should have been at Clemson if it's at it was at Clemson. So I think Carolina could be a sneaky pick here. Even though I think Clemson's rolling right now, but the fact that Carolina's been on their win streak. So both these teams on their 3-game win streak have done those wins at home. Since this game is at South Carolina, that home crowd is going to be even more hyped up. A, because it's a rivalry game, and B, because they've been on a win streak, so even more people are gonna want to go. So I think I'm gonna pick South Carolina here. I like the way Clemson's been playing, but I just think that I think South Carolina is going to get the better of them in this game. The last game is North Carolina versus NC State. This one's split about 60-40. You look at the quarterback play. Even though Drew May has one more interception than Armstrong, he does have 20 touchdowns versus Armstrong's 8 touchdowns. 6. Armstrong does also run the ball, though. He's run the ball for 522 yards. And for 6 touchdowns. But, just looking at the stats, the season leaders, North Carolina leads in all of those stats. They also just lost to Clemson, whereas NC State is on a 4-game win streak. They beat Clemson. This is going to be a tight game. Yeah, no, North Carolina, their 3 losses are all very recent, and they're all in the last 5 games. Where is this game? Oh, this is at NC State. It's going to be 53 degrees, so it's going to be nice. Because of that, I think NC State is going to be throwing the ball. Wait, no. I think North Carolina is going to be throwing the ball a lot, since it's going to be nice. Man, I don't know. This game's going to be tricky. The spread is even close, too. Like, North Carolina's -3 on the spread, so... just because I think I might pick North Carolina State, even though the stats, like, for the season leaders are in favor of North Carolina, I don't like that 3 of North Carolina's losses their 3 losses that they've taken this year are all within the past 5 games. So they've essentially lost 3 times this month. Because there's like 4 to 5 games per month. So I don't like that. This game's also at North Carolina State. I'm surprised this isn't split more down the middle. I think this is going to be one of my sneaky picks, too. I'm going to pick North Carolina State. So let's see how many sneaky picks I have, because I feel like I have a lot this game. So we've got 2 here. 3, 4. I don't consider Ohio State a sneaky pick because it's just split so close down the middle. So I've got 4 out of my 10 picks being upsets. Okay, for the tiebreaker, to end the special episode, we have Ohio State versus Michigan at how many points they're going to score. I'm going to say 53 points. Because, like I said earlier, I think neither of the teams are going to go into the 40s for their points like last year, just because, both of their offenses have holes in them. So I don't think it's unreasonable to think that that there's not going to be as many points scored this game as normal. Also, run games are typically slower. Normally when you run the ball, it takes up a lot more time in the game, so there's not going to be as many opportunities to score points. So I'm going to say it like they're going to be like within the 20s. So let's just say I'm going to say one team scores 24 and one team scores 29. I think score will be 24 to 29. And that's where I'm getting 53 from. Yes. The maths. So okay. Yeah, so that's the special episode. I know it's a little long, but yeah. I mean, this was also live recording, so I mean, yeah. Anyways, I'll see you guys next week on Thursday. I'll be recording Tuesday, but I'll be back on Thursday with a official episode. I'll talk a little bit more about the midseason meets there. Yeah. I'll see you guys next week.